What's going on, everybody? FYB presents Wise Word Wednesdays, a quick live stream to help you get closer to accomplishing your dreams. I'm your host, Joe Spider, and I do represent the fresh. What's happening? Listen, I want to first off say thank you to each and every person who's taken time out of their day to check out the Wise Word Wednesday show, whether you are watching on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, or Instagram Live. I want to say I appreciate you, or whether you're listening to the audio recorded version on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I still want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy day to check us out. Listen, we got another dope episode for you today, but before I get into that, it's important that I talk to y'all about what's been going on. So obviously I have not done the show for the past 2 weeks. Usually we like to do a live show with y'all every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. But last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, I was traveling in Southern California for work, and I was out there the entire week. And I did bring my laptop to be able to do the show, but I ended up meeting up with an old friend, and we, had some much needed bro time. We chopped it up, and by the time I got back to my hotel, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I didn't really want to, I was kind of tired, exhausted from working all day. So I didn't really want to, record a bad episode or anything like that for y'all. Now, the following week, which was last week, it was the 14th, which was Valentine's Day. And I did have an episode that was supposed to be scheduled, but I didn't want to intrude on, people's time with their loved one, right? With it being Valentine's Day. So I had canceled last week's show, not only for, my guests, but who they, could potentially be with. I don't really celebrate Valentine's Day. I didn't have no Valentine. I was at the crib with it, but I'm just saying for anybody else that was, that might have had something such as my guests, or even people that were interested in listening and whatnot. So that's why I didn't have the show those past 2 weeks. Man, I've been out and about for work, traveling and stuff like that, and I still got a lot of traveling to do, but I'm super excited for this episode. We're actually doing part 2 of this episode, which is focus on your mentals. If you didn't get a chance to check out part 1, you can do that. It is on my the Wise Word Wednesday YouTube channel. You can check it out. We recorded it back in November of 2023, and so we are here back for round 2. So ladies and gentlemen, if you could do me a favor and show some love, I have my rich city representative here with me back to do part 2. Give it up to my man. This man is super dope, bro, and I just really love bro. As a matter of fact, this man is a social worker. My man is an entrepreneur. My man is a fashion extravaganza extraordinaire. Give it up for my boy, man, LaVante Hill. What's going on, big dog?
Appreciate you, my brother. Thank you again for allowing me to be back and to embrace this space. So, man, I'm grateful. So I'm thankful to just be able to get this stuff started. So let's do it.
Man, that's a fact, man. I appreciate, you coming on again. Like I talked to the folks, this is part 2, you know, but I want to touch on, last time in part 1 back in November when the episode dropped, it did really well. A lot of people, had some good feedback and just some good commentary in regards to the information that talked about it. You talked about, your struggles within the field of mental health, your personal struggles on their own personal journey. So could you, for maybe people who weren't available to check out episode 1 or part 1, could you, and I'm sure this is going to be part 2 of many, you know what I'm saying? But talk about, your journey in regards to the mental health aspect. You talk about, during COVID and how you were kind of revealed some things about yourself.
So definitely I could touch bases on it. So I'm diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. And so I was diagnosed with that September 19th, 2019. That's where things really started to skyrocket for me when my mental health declined. And pretty much for me, it was a huge change in just how my perception was, the way that my thoughts were responding, the way that I associated certain things that normally weren't really an issue for me. And so during my journey with my mental health, it was something that really pushed me to the lowest. And I really got to see how difficult it is to be with your thoughts when they don't really align with who you are, when they really are in a certain space that is against what you feel is your character or just your being. And so that was something that was really difficult for me when just in the time when my mental health actually declined, because it was as if everything that I had taught myself and that I thought I knew and I stood on those grounds all went away. And it was as if my mind was separate from myself. And that was really difficult for me to get a grasp of, especially dealing with a lot of the emotions that comes with it, a lot of the sadness and loneliness. And of course, during COVID, where the world is not really anything at that point, right? It's, in a sense, the world stopped. It made it really small for my world as far as things that I can do or how I would reach out for help.
Man, I think, a lot of people had that struggle right during the pandemic because of the limitations, right? You had people didn't have as easy access. There were some people that did have easier access because now instead of getting up and maybe driving to go see their therapist, they were able to just hop on a computer and get online. But in regards to the accessibility of knowing the resources to be able to reach out to, right? Everybody doesn't have maybe great insurance or maybe have the finances to be able to kind of fund that. So I definitely appreciate you kind of walking. But what was your process like navigating through that particular portion where it's like, you were in isolation, you were essentially solo dolo for really about a year and a half, 2 years. What was that process of transformation like for you?
Mm, I say for myself, it was really difficult. And it was difficult for a lot of ways because just me being a man, you don't really go into these places of where you're vulnerable. So that's one way that I can describe 2019 for me was just a very vulnerable time. And it was so difficult for me because everything was new. Me crying, me being emotional, me showing this side of me where I felt as if I wasn't strong, right? All these different things that they instill into men as a child, especially black men. I can speak for myself, especially somebody growing up in poverty. You really have these certain norms and values that are instilled into you as far as how you should be as a man. All of these things were kind of ripped away from me because I was crying every single day. I was emotional. I had these moments of where I felt like I was just hopeless, helpless. And these were all different experiences that I've never had because I was always taught, well, you're strong, right? You stay in that mindset. And so when my thoughts didn't align, or when I felt as if I wanted to be strong, but mentally I couldn't, or physically I didn't know where to get that strength from, that broke me down. Especially during COVID, because a lot of people weren't coming around. I mean, the think about it, right? With your mental health already declining, and you're thinking, oh, well, what if I affect my family, right? What if I do this? What if I do that? It made it really small in my world because I didn't want anybody to come by me. So it, in a sense, it felt as if I was isolating myself unintentionally and intentionally at the same time, if that makes sense. And that was really difficult for me to grasp my head on it because I felt as if I was the issue or if I was the problem. And so 2019 was really hard just navigating that. I mean, I still was able to go to work, which was great. I was able to do some small routines, but really at that point in time, 2019 into about 2022, really or 2021, I will say, that was a time where I don't even remember a lot of life because it was so much stress. It was so much just on my mental because every single day was the same thing. I was just trying to get better and I didn't know how.
You touched on a couple of different things that, I kind of want to see if I could put a pin in and talk about because, or at least, kind of spark the conversation with us because you talked about things like, you crying, right. And us, you being a man and told like, you're strong, like, you know, that process I think is an interesting one for us as men, right? Because we have to find a balance between uh, being the strong leader, protector, provider that our society has created us or socialize us to be, uh, while simultaneously balancing the emotional. I don't want to say like regurgitation, but the emotional outlet that's necessary for us to be a normal functioning or a successful functioning human being in society. Because I think we have this challenge. It's a very unique challenge, right? To for us is because the world requires so much from us as men, but we are not allowed to express it in a particular way because of the way that society kind of shuns us, if we become an outlet. So like for an example, I kind of talked about this before, but since 2020, I've lost over 23 people that I have a personal relationship with. So we're talking 4 years, 23 people, and most of them were within from 2020 to 2022. You know what I'm saying? And it was interesting because, I'm revealing this right now. Just last Saturday, I lost my grandmother. You know what I'm saying? And like I found out through a text message while I'm at a work event. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm there. I get a text message from my mom's and from my sister, and they tell me like, your grandma just passed, but I have to do this work event where I'm in front of 1,000+ people, and I have to, you know what I'm saying, keep going. And which, of course I did. You kept going as the way that, you're what's meant to be. But I think the challenge is that I haven't had an opportunity to really continue to even dwell in that because of how numb I've gotten as a person of this. Like, you got to keep working, you got to keep working, you got to keep working, you got to keep going. And before you know it, like, it's Wednesday and I really have not even really acknowledged the fact that that has happened. But so I love the fact that you talked about that within your journey personally, right? That you were able to kind of find a healthy balance of it. It's like you have this outlet, but you also were confused about it. Like, why am I having this particular outlet when it's not necessarily like what I've been trained to do or socialized to do? But it doesn't mean that I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first I want to say, man, I appreciate you for the vulnerability. That's a big piece right there. It's being able to process that, just grief as a whole, right? It's really difficult because it's very complex. It's not linear. Grief looks different for everyone. You won't grieve the same. And so even within my journey of when I was able to recognize the balance, that was the hardest thing in the world for me, truthfully, simply because it was so abnormal to me, where I was instilled, you don't show emotions, right? You don't show these feelings regardless of funerals, things of that nature. I never understood the value of being able to process anything that's related to emotions. Similar to yourself, where you said it's more of a feeling of you're desensitized to the fact that you do have to slow down, right? And so it came to a real breaking point for myself, which I'm very grateful for my older brother who really was by my side throughout a lot of this, whether it was talking to me about my mental, really understanding how to callous what it was that I was going through, and actually telling me that I do need to feel these emotions and feel what I'm going through. That was really hard for me to be vulnerable because I felt as if it was breaking down what was embedded into me, just throughout childhood and just me as a person, and that idea of being less than because I can't handle what I'm going through and I can't help everyone else. I feel like I'm less of a man or I'm less of a person. And so being able to recognize what that balance was, that was the breaking point for me. And as we talk about this, really what comes to mind, and I say this to myself a lot of the times, the strongest person in the room forgets what strength is when you're going through a time of suffering. And the reason why I say this is because
I'm gonna write that
that's
down.
so,
My bad. I'm gonna write that down.
oh, trust me, write it down. Write it down. It's one that I really I live by because it's really true. And for men, it's very true because it's always been a cultural norm, societal norm that we got to carry everything, right? We put it on our shoulders, we get through it, we toughen it out, we go help others, we feed into others. As far as African American men, we've never really had the opportunity to slow down, to be the one to say, well, let me take some time off today, right? Because if we don't rock, then the boat drops, the boat sinks in a sense, right? And so we've never really got that value of instilling of, okay, let's process what you're going through. It's okay to take the time off. You need that for yourself. And so being able to recognize that, dang, the reason why I'm so emotional right now and I'm crying and I really can't do it is because my body's telling me I'm tired. But I'm not listening to it because mentally, what's ingrained in me is you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. And so it took for me to get to this point of being at my lowest as an adult for me to recognize that you're not less than that because you can't pull the strength to go through. You also have to redefine what that means to you. And I had to redefine what strength looked like. The fact that I could still cry and get up the next day, that's strength. Even though you may not see it in that way, but the body's going to tell you what's wrong, even if you don't want to accept it. And I had to realize that that's what my body was doing. My body was saying, man, LaVante, you tired. Take a day off. That's all you need. Take about 30 minutes for yourself and let yourself know, man, this is overwhelming. This is exhausting. And I had to learn how to do that. I had to teach myself that it's okay to not be the greatest and finding everything out for myself. And that was a hard shift that it took me. But going throughout that time, like I said, 2019, 2000 to 2022, for me, that was a time of suffering. I suffered for 3 years for that. 3 years to get to that point, and it took a lot out of me to be able to sit here today, and it was worth it. It was needed, but it was a lot of redefining and really evolving the views that were instilled into me to be able to work for the person I am today.
So, when you are dealing or talking with people who are or have gone through certain, whether it be traumatic experiences or maybe just an experience that they interpreted or internalized as a traumatic experience, how has the transition of them going from how they were prior to your services to how they are after starting the services with you as a therapist, or social worker, how has that worked how does that help you? How does that make you feel when you're able to kind of help them transition?
Okay. So for anyone that's listening, if you may not know, I'm associate clinical social worker. So I've been a mental health therapist for over half a decade. And so I work with a huge variety of different individuals, youth, ages 2 to 21, etc. However, so when working with kiddos with trauma or just anybody with trauma as a whole, it's very different. I think it's a very different experience for anybody that comes into my office or that works with me, specifically because, as I've said, grief is not linear, right? Trauma is not linear as well. You can have somebody that's been exposed to the same exact trauma and not be affected at all. And you can have somebody that was exposed, to the same exact one and be impacted greatly, right? So trauma is very unique because you have to handle it delicately, but you have to look at it differently for that unique person. However, a big thing when it comes down to trauma is really understanding what success looks like for that person, because it may not be that that person is coming in and they want everything to stop, right? They don't want to re-experience the feelings. They don't want the symptoms anymore. They don't want to be sad. It may be very different for every single person. And so it'll be times where certain individuals come into the office and they really want to work on, okay, I continue to feel as if I'm re-experiencing this feeling. What that looks like for me is being able to talk with them and let them know first, I understand what that feels like. The level of empathy of what I've been able to gain throughout my own struggles are able to be utilized to build not only a deeper connection, but a sense of understanding. And it's not an understanding to their exact situation, but it's understanding that I know what suffering feels like. I know what it feels like when you have an experience that you don't want, when you don't know what's going on and you're confused, right? That's the big piece of where we build that rapport. But then we look into the fact of, okay, this person came in with feeling this experience every single day of their life. They were in this very secluded world for themselves. Success for them may look like, all right, now this person is taking a few extra walks throughout their week. Maybe now they're socializing with friends again. They're going to certain activities and enjoying their life again, even if it's on a small scale. That right there for me allows for me to understand, and it allows for me to redefine that what I'm doing at this point is being able to be what I like to classify as a wounded healer, right? And of course, the healer context, right? Everybody thinks of like shaman, stuff like that. But when I think about wounded healer for myself specifically, it's someone that's went through a significant amount of an experience that was detrimental, traumatic, or just something that pushed them to their lowest and their breaking point, and they've been able to live and tell the story to help and heal others. And so that really is really at the core for when I am working with individuals who have went to either similar traumas, traumas of their own. I just want to be able to be someone that's a part of that team now to give them that support, one, but also to help them meet and reach whatever goal of success that looks like. And I'm really there as a guiding point of someone that I wish I would have had when I went through my worst times, whether that be in my childhood or even as an adult, right? As I said, I have my older brother, but I'm really being what I had in that moment. I'm wanting to be that for them. And I do it in a professional capacity, but also allow for them to understand that trauma is going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's not going to go away fully, but you can get to a point where you're enjoying life again, when you're living instead of just surviving.
So do you think the the world, or let's just use America, right? Because I don't want to go global with this. Let's just use America. Do you think the America has prepared or has the proper tools in place to allow men in mass to be able to shift uh, their emotional expression? I say that because, again, right now, right, we're living off the time of where, the previous, for thousands of years at this point now, especially in regards to, right, the black men or people from the African diaspora, right, for at the bare minimum 400 years, we have not been able to express emotionally. It's been quite frowned upon, right? Whether it's from slave time, whether it's from Jim Crow era, whether it's from, you know, even from the 70s, right? The civil rights movements, whether it's from the 90s, right, or the crack era in the 80s, right? Like, so many times we kind of have not been able to express ourselves in a healthy way. I feel like, or not feel like, I know that historically the only way that men have been acceptable in expressing themselves have been in ways that have been counterproductive to either their personal growth or in the growth of their particular culture or society. So, for example, right, let's just use, right, it's a 50-year of hip hop, right? Hip hop as a whole has, you know, as a whole has turned into a particular culture that, demonizes, that talks about, sexual assault. It glorifies sexual assault or sexual promiscuity, that glorifies violence and things like that, right? Not to say that there aren't artists that aren't promoting those kind of things. I'm just saying, as a society, hip hop as a culture has typically had a negative impact. Now, of course, there's a reason for that, and I wrote about this a while back when I read about this and then researched and wrote about it when, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, a lot of these mainstream companies bought up the different hip hop private or independent record labels in order to kind of mainstream or streamline the kind of music that would reach popular radio, which ultimately navigates how the students or the young people were able to listen to it and essentially create this culture. But I'm just still saying, so I want to give credit to that, but I'm just saying, as a society, right, we love things that, like, we love the aggression, that's acceptable. We love the bad boy image, that's acceptable. We love all these different things that kind of really have been detrimental to ourselves or our community. So do you think that we have, as a society in America, are prepared? I do want to acknowledge my friend Majane, that she said decided to heal no matter what society has to say about it. I love that, for you, and I appreciate you, expressing that, right? Because people do have to make the decision for themselves. And even if society doesn't tell you that it is acceptable to do it, we definitely should do the work. And I think that once you do the work, as You know what I'm saying? LaVante talked about, as I talked about earlier, it's like you feel it, you know, and it feels like a huge burden is lifted. But what are your thoughts on what I had to say about that?
So I'll definitely say in a time of where we're at now, when it comes to just expression for Black men, anything of that nature, I definitely would say it's more romanticized in today's time, where it's great because a lot of men are breaking out of their shells, being able to express themselves, being able to express their emotions. However, even as a society, I feel we're still so far from where we could be or where we should be. And the reason why that comes down to is because there's other factors that have to be considered when thinking about men expressing themselves in a certain way or being able to even talk about how they're feeling, right? There's some negative connotations that come around that. However, within the Black community, I can't overgeneralize it, but as a whole, it's a lot of stigma that's embedded within the culture, that's embedded into the beliefs as far as how men should be. And that stuff, even with years going by, it's still prevalent today. It just looks different, whether it's on social media, whether it's in the music, whether it's about how people talk about it, whether it's about the certain ways that people respond to it when you come from a place of vulnerability. That's still deeply rooted and embedded into our culture, regardless of it. And so as I see more people being more willing to express themselves or being more willing to express what they're going through, it's still so far back because, as you just said, regardless of what you're going through, you have to do it for yourself, right? Some people don't have that same mindset because it is difficult to build a certain internal relationship. It's hard for people to say, yeah, I love myself. Or a lot of the times we go throughout our days, we never say we're proud of ourselves until someone acknowledges it or until we do something that gives us some validation. Oh, I did something to help you out. Oh, I did this that was important to me, right? You can't just get up and say, man, I got up today. Like that's a blessing, right? Even though it is realistically, because yeah, we don't think that somebody didn't wake up and we did, because we do this every single day. It's not something that we really take account to. And so when we think about it in the sense of a man expressing his emotions, well, when you go express your emotions and you say, well, that really hurt my feelings. Well, they look at you as, oh, it hurts your feelings. Like what do you mean, right? You raise an eyebrow from it, right? Or it's like, oh, you soft, right? And but the reality is that I'm emotionally intelligent enough to be able to recognize that this is something that affected me in a negative way, and I just want to express that to you. Because when you get the response of, okay, you're juiced up to say, well, I really didn't like how you approached that, and somebody gives you a negative response, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be less likely to express that to someone else because someone that you trusted did not give you the response that you felt you needed. And so those are some of those factors that really push men away from being able to express themselves, even though it's a very natural thing. But also, it's so much stuff in the world that makes it seem as if you express yourself, you're not strong. If you express yourself, then you can't be like the people that are in rap videos and stuff like that. But as you see, everybody cries at a certain point, right? Everybody gets emotional at a certain point. Nobody's just going to stay stoic through everything. Maybe some people are going through it, but they're doing it in silence. And see, what I've noticed in today's time with expressing yourself or expressing your feelings, that's still internalized. It's suffering in silence. That's the way that men choose to do it. Because that right there, that's hard. That's how you get through it. Because yeah, if I don't show you, then it's as if the feeling goes away, even though the body, like I said earlier, the body's going to tell you what you need before you even think it. It's going to show you exactly what's going on. And so the fact that certain individuals have a difficult time with recognizing that, hey, not everybody's going to be open to you sharing, and that's okay. Not everybody's going to be open to the fact that you're a little bit more emotional from this because it reminds you of something that happened in your past. Not everybody's going to be open to it. But until men build a certain resiliency and understanding, which starts with building a relationship with yourself, that's a big piece that really supported me as well, because I was very self-aware, but I didn't know what it felt like when I started to get really self-critical. I didn't know how difficult that was. It was as if I became my biggest enemy when I was somebody that I love myself the most. And so until you're able to really sit there with yourself and be present with you, it becomes really difficult for you to fully attune to the emotional side of yourself, but also just come from a place of gratitude that you can even express it without you feeling less than, because not everybody's doing what's the norm.
I love your response to that. And I want to acknowledge Majane's first of all, I'll acknowledge Stevie's comment. She says she didn't like none of that, the stuff that I had talked about in regards to what black men have kind of produced over the years, or what society finds it acceptable to emotionally express in a negative way. But then Marjane also said, she said she thinks it's endearing for a man to express his emotions. Emotional intelligence is attractive. And the reason why I think it's dope that you hit on this point, and I think that she hit on this point, I'm going to kind of blend them together, is because what I've noticed is that when you start to develop this emotional maturation of expression, right? Or this maturation of emotional expression, there we go. You learn that when you're younger, they may not appreciate it, right? The right person may not appreciate your ability to be in tune with your emotions. So for example, if I was in middle school and, I hit my arm and I start crying in middle school, I might get made fun of for that, right? Because I'm showing that expression of pain, right? I'm using my tears to show that I felt hurt, right? A person, right, might not be able to understand or appreciate that ability to express my emotion. However, when you express yourself to the right person, right, they can understand and they can really appreciate the fact that you were able to express to be vulnerable enough in front of them, right? Because they understand that that is not something that especially black men, but just men in general, typically do in front of other people. And so I've learned now, right? And this took years of therapy, right, to be able to have this ability now to articulate the very specific reason that I've had an emotional disturbance. Right. So, for example, when I'm talking about emotional disturbance, I mean going from happy to sad, right? Going from angry to happy, right? All an emotional disturbance. So my emotion has shifted for a particular reason. When I was younger, I would just lash out. Right. I would just be upset. I had a temper. I was just super angry, and I would just express it by form of physicality or destruction. Right. But as an adult and as a person who has done a lot of work, still not perfect, continuously working, but who has progressed, right, from years ago, I'm able to pinpoint accurately the reason for this emotional disturbance and able to articulate it to somebody else who either offended me, who caused that particular disturbance, or someone who's curious as to why they notice a change in my behavior in the first place. And what I've noticed that now as an adult, as a mature person who looks to have conversations with other mature people, I notice that ability to the right person is like loved, right? It's like super appreciated because they don't have to play the guessing game. They're like, no, I know exactly what's wrong with you because you just told me. And now we can have a conversation about why that happened. Why do I feel like this way? Why all these different things? So I definitely love the fact that it's interesting that you talked about it as she was typing it as well, too. So I really, really love that. And Stevie said, men have yet to cultivate the social support in the spaces that women have. Looking forward to seeing that soon. 100%. And Majane said, so true. Maturity definitely factors in. But absolutely, Stevie, like I look forward to the kind of society. And this is why, I definitely said I wanted to do a part two, of our conversation, because you are creating that space for other men, right? You're creating that space for other people, young men, but still these are people who will eventually grow up, hopefully, to become men, to become functioning adults in our society. And the question is, are they going to be functioning successfully because they have been equipped with the tools as a youngin to be able to navigate through their emotions and not express it in a negative or in a harmful way, but in an articulate and in a maybe a way that can be helpful or useful. You're creating that space for these people. You're providing them with the tools, and I think I was talking to my friends, and I apologize for going on this little tangent here, but I was talking to my friends the other day, and I was telling them I know what the algorithms are looking for. I know that if I can talk negatively about women, if I could bash women, if I could talk about how they not this or they not that, I know that the algorithms are going to push that agenda, right? I know what it's going to work, but how does that help our people? Right. So I would much rather focus on the things that help our people and give highlight and platform to those kind of situations and things, as opposed to focus on the same thing that everybody's talking about that doesn't really inspire change.
Mhm. A lot of people aren't brave enough to be able to go on that route, right? Because a lot of individuals want to go within the norm. A lot of people want to go with what's actually working, with what everybody's doing, right? Regardless if it's conforming, regardless if it's going against their own values or views on what they see about things. So to be able to go on a journey where it's, for lack of better words, the road less traveled, right? It means more of a purpose for you. It's more of a passion for you. You're doing something for a greater goal as opposed to just doing it for clickbait. And a lot of people, as I believe you said his name was Stevie, he had said a lot of spaces
My
are
bad.
cultivated. Yeah. Excuse me, my apologies. But she has stated that a lot of spaces are cultivated and curated yet for men to be able to express and talk as women have been able to create these spaces. And that's 100% correct. It's not something that's happening at all. It's at a very slow rate. And even the information about where to go to these places or the accessibility of it is really rare, right? You have it in certain spaces, you have it in certain areas, but it's not really created for everyone to go there or to go to these spaces. And so it really starts, as I think about it, it starts within your internal friend group. It starts in spaces where it starts in the home. That's number one, in spaces that you go to the most, but also it's about just having normal conversations about it, normalizing the fact that you can talk to one of your good friends and say, man, I was really feeling bad today. And you don't laugh about it. You really attune to them. You really actively listen to what they're going through. And that's a big piece, actively listening, right? Listening in a way where you're not needing to respond. You're listening simply for the benefit of listening because you want to create that space to be heard. And it's really easy to create these spaces. In my opinion, as I've seen throughout these times, you can open up a conversation with just about anybody, right? But it's about a person actually wanting to be in that space to do that, and also looking at it from a place of not selfishness, but selflessness of, okay, I'm here for the other, not for myself. I'm not getting a benefit. It's so simple to create these spaces and ask a question simple like, how you doing? And actually put value into understanding what's the response that they say to you. And those type of spaces are things that I actively want to create. And I actively want individuals to understand, especially men, to know that it's cool to be vulnerable. It's cool to do that with me. I'm a space where you can actually just be yourself. I don't care really what it looks like. And that's why I try to cultivate those spaces of just asking certain questions that maybe you're not asked, right? Are you good? You tell yourself you love yourself today, right? Because it's abnormal. It's something where it's like, well, that's weird for me to say I love myself. Well, if you get on the plane, they tell you to put your mask on first before anybody else when danger comes. It's not strange there. So why is it strange when you get up and tell yourself you
Oh, you
love you?
talking heavy.
Because you got up to it, right?
You talking heavy, brother. You said you got to mask yourself before you can put this help somebody
Yeah.
else, man. That's a fact. And like you said, it's normal in cases of emergencies. I'm gonna have to use that for Wise Word Wednesday. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro.
Drop the gems. Come on.
I wanna read the comment as well too. Stevie Kame said, "We're fighting generations of all kinds of trauma, especially emotional trauma. You must have grace, compassion, and patience for yourself. For you are the curse breakers." Absolutely. And Simplicity's Perfection said, "Men are starting to change the men shouldn't cry narrative with their own children for the next generation." I absolutely and wholeheartedly agree. We're changing that narrative to it's okay to cry, but also explain what it is that you're crying about, right? What is it that's causing you to have this emotional response to that, right? I think that's not just to cry, which is, again, it's fine. Everybody's going to cry. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, can you articulate and explain why you are having this particular emotional response to that? So I do love that. And then the other thing is, Stevie said, absolutely, men have to make space for their peers to express themselves and to hold them accountable. Don't let white patriarchy and capitalism jack you up. That is exactly right. I think it's important for, us to create those spaces and continue to allow other people to navigate it from their personal journey. Because, like, Taya said, there's a story, and I know you talked about earlier people experiencing the same trauma but having different responses to it. There's a story that there was a man who was an alcoholic, right? And he had two children, two sons, right? And one son became an alcoholic because his father was an alcoholic, and the other son never drank alcohol because his father was an alcoholic. So two people in the same household having the same experience, but the way that they interpret that experience is different, right? The way that they respond to that experience is different. And so you can have people going through the same things, but it doesn't mean that they're going to have the same, it's going to have the same impact on one's life. And so I think we need to allow people to explain it from their perspective, their experience. And it's important to hear, oh, my bad, to hear them, right? And hear them articulate why they're crying, why they're going through it, why they feel like they do. Because what I've learned in therapy is that, and again, I'm still working. It's like we're all continuously learning and healing. But what I've learned is that when I'm able to have the freedom to express myself, right? At first, it's like, right? And then after a few months, you like, uh-huh, but right. And then, like, after a year, you're like, well, well, honestly, this is what, you know what I mean? And so it's a progression. But if you don't allow that person to, especially that man, to be able to get it out the only way that they know first, and then kind of say, oh, that was great. I appreciate you being vulnerable. Hey, have you thought about some of this? Have you thought about that? Well, what about this? And then they will start to feel comfortable, but not until we first create that space. So I love that.
That you just touched on some great, and I want to just emphasize on that where you had stated they have to be able to express in a way that they know how first, right? That's really big at the core because it's meeting someone where they're at, right? It instills value, it instills the simplicity of being heard. It makes you have a connection, a meaningful connection at that. And because with how the world is, man, everybody has an opinion. The world is opinionated no matter what. And everybody's going to either label you depending on how you respond. They're going to have a certain judgment about it. That's just inevitable, which is unfortunate, but that's the way that life works. And so when individuals come in and they express themselves maybe in a more aggressive way, right? A lot of people may see it as, oh, well, this person is more angry, or this person has a poor temperament, or this person is not able to control their emotions. But really, they don't look at the fact that maybe this person was never taught how to express their emotions. Maybe this person doesn't do well when everybody is calm and their world is in this place of chaos. They look at all these different things that could be wrong when they don't understand the simple fact of maybe this person has never got the opportunity to not yell. So that's the only way they can articulate and communicate what their emotions are. No one's looking at that because everybody has a fixed picture of what this certain thing looks like, right? If you show aggression, you're an angry person. You must be mad. They don't look at passion. They don't look at someone being exhausted, tired. When you come from a place of saying that you're sad or emotional, they look at that as weakness, or someone that is less than. But they don't look at that as, oh, well, maybe that person is more soft-spoken when they express themselves, or maybe they have a negative relationship with aggression. So the best way that they're able to keep themselves regulated is they're going to speak to you in a calm tone, in a tone that's much more polite. They don't look at those things because the simple fact is it's really hard to meet someone where they're at when you already have an opinion of where they're
Mm. Yo, yeah, heavy, heavy, heavy. Stevie said, at times you don't know, why you're crying, and that's absolutely okay. And I definitely, agree. I think you just talked about it. It's like, that person still has to have the freedom to express themselves. It's okay if
at.
they don't know why, but we can still allow them that freedom. And I think, you touched on, and also Melissa Maganzo said she dropped a bunch of fire emojis. She said she loved both the people on this live. So we love you, sis, as
Of
well.
course.
Stevie said aggressive expressions are a lot for her. Understandable, for sure, no doubt. But when I want to go back to the expression without judgment, allowing people to express themselves. And you talked about no matter what, people are going to judge you regardless. And I think we're in a very interesting time. I think people have always been judgmental, right, in society, but I think we were able to block out or ignore the judgments because that we didn't see them, right? Or we might have heard a couple of whispers at times back in the 90s and early 2000s, but we didn't have to see it on a constant basis. I think we're in an interesting time now because with all these social medias on X, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, what I'm saying, like they, all these different things that are going on. Now you're constantly bombarded with information about how other people feel. And the brave ones will, be like, put it, at you or whatever, and so they'll express they often project as opposed to allowing you to express yourself and then them receiving it, trying to receive it from your perspective, right? Like oftentimes people listen to respond or react as opposed to listening to understand. And I think that's the society that we're in. But I think it's also important to, as we change the curse or break the curse that's been, and we make a shift for this next generation, it's also important to instill in them the confidence that they have the ability to express themselves, and it's okay that other people might not might attack you for your expression. That's okay. You still should express yourself. One thing I know about, I'm thankful that my mom did for me growing up, and I give her a ton of praise. She instilled a ton of confidence in me. Since I was a baby, she always told me I was great. She always told me I was going to be amazing. She told me that I was going to make some change. She told me that I am just like the dopest. Like, and it's like, it instilled a level of confidence in me that the world can't break. And this is why I have no problem doing things the way that I genuinely feel that they need to be done and know that they need to be done. And it's okay if other people don't agree. I'm okay with that. Now it's different if people show me some data and some information, says, hey, this might work better for you if you do that, right? Like if you tell me that if I walk outside, it's going to be a rock that's going to drop on my head and I'm going to die because it's an 80% chance, I would appreciate that information. But and that's okay. But I feel confident in myself, in my decisions, in my abilities, because since I was a child, I was provided the information or the affirmations that I had this kind of ability. And so I think it's important to kind of instill that in the next generation.
I agree that it's very important. You really touched on something that's very pivotal. And it's really spot on the way that I think about, even with individuals going to therapy and things of that nature. A lot of the values and morals that are instilled within any child, it begins at home. It begins with what they see on a constant basis. I'll give an example from when I see individuals come into my office and they work with me. A lot of the times families come in and they're like, well, fix my child, right? They came in with this, make sure you fix them. That's what you're coming here for. And a lot of the times they get a rude awakening because I have to explain to them that success looks different for every child that comes in here, but also the way that they're going to have sustainable progress throughout this entirety is that what they build here is also instilled in the home. So that means that while I'm doing this work here for however they're here with me, you're going to also instill these things in the way that you can as a parent at home so it can actually stick. It doesn't just stop because I see this kid for an hour, I see this individual for an hour. They're with you for the rest of that time. And so the instillment of these certain affirmations, it comes from the people that you are closest to. Because regardless of it, when you are growing up, you learn by viewing, you learn by what you see. If they're not telling you it, you're going to learn by what you're seeing. Okay, if they're operating this way, this is how I need to operate. If you have somebody in the home that's a lot more aggressive, you're going to learn that, okay, when I communicate and I get angry, oh, I'm going to use these hands instead of being able to verbalize it. These things are learned as you're watching what's happening in your world. So it's really important that when you think about these certain values and these certain type of ways of thinking and living that you want to have, you also consider that it starts in the home. It starts with the people that nurture you the most, regardless of if that's mom, dad, whatever attachment that may be, that's where it begins. And that's how you instill everything that you want or everything that you're going to believe about yourself as you get older. But if that doesn't happen there, you don't fully get to grasp as a child the full capacity of what it means to just be a person, to be able to be who you are.
Absolutely. 100%, and I think, that it has to be everybody all in, right? In order to, that it's that old passage what it says, it takes a village to raise a child. It's not going to take, like,
Man,
if you're expecting your teacher to just to go and, going to be the person that's going to change your child and turn them into an excellent student, you don't understand the way it works, right? It takes, what are they doing when they come home, right? If they come home and all they're doing is watching music or listening to music, playing video games, watching television, and they don't do any homework, like, it's gonna show, right? And over time, it's like that Kobe Bryant thing where he talks about, like, over time, if I get up earlier and I have a third practice or a fourth practice every day, like, yeah, that one day I only got an extra hour, 2 hours in, but in a week, that's 5 hours or 10 hours, right? In a month, right? Like that, and you do the math and they can't keep up. And over time, you do that for years and they will never, ever be on your level, right? So imagine a student, a young child, right? That has this kind of, if they're able to practice an hour with you and then they go home and they do another hour or two with their parents, and then they go to school and they're able to articulate or verbalize themselves on a consistent basis with their friends. Again, it's not like they're going to have 1 hour conversations every day with their friends at school, but maybe they have like a quick 2 minute conversation, or maybe they just say something here and there from time to time. They're developing that confidence. Over time, they will be able to mature and they'll be able to have safe, productive expression. And I think that's just, it takes an entire village. It's not going to be one person that's going to change it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's sometimes it only takes one person to really open up that village, right? I am a firm believer of it takes a village, because it does. It takes everybody, right? When you think about mental health, it's the well-being of the social, emotional, and psychological. So social side is what you see, who you interact with, who you talk with, where are you getting some of this information on your day-to-day. The emotional side is how you talk with yourself, the relationship, how you're regulating, how you're identifying your emotions. Psychological side is how do you think about it? Right? Your thoughts have the power to really impact you in a very great way. It can be that mental freedom or the mental prison. Right? You get the choice by seeing how you respond to what it is that's going on internally. And so when you think about those things for a child, when you think about a child that's growing as their brains are also growing as well, everything they're taking it in as a sponge, whether it's from infancy up into early adolescence, middle childhood, whatever the case may be, you're taking in everything. And so everything around you is going to have an effect. And if someone's not being able to give you the insight as to this is correct, this is not, you're going to build your own perception of it. You're going to build your own idea of what that means for you to operate in your world, in your capacity, because no one's instilling anything different than what you're already thinking. So to be able to look at everything of what's going to reinstill these certain virtues, what's going to reinstill these certain changes to these generational curses, if we can call it that, that comes from who's around you, but it also comes from these individuals and what they mean to you, right? That attachment. What do these people mean? Because as you see the story all the time, it'll be that one teacher that the student really gravitates to, right? That's outside of the family. Yeah, it takes one person, but it also comes from the attachment, right? How you build that relationship, the rapport, what that looks like, what that person does to trust you, or how you feel that person makes you feel as a whole. It starts there as well. So it's really being able to have everybody within that village just actively wanting to be there for you. That's all it takes.
That's a fact. That's a fact. And Stevie said many of us have so much to unlearn, and she said it takes a village and a real thug like her. No doubt, no doubt. Gangsta Stevie.
Unlearning is difficult. That is the hardest thing in the world. Unlearning values that once served us. As we get older, we recognize that they really don't have value anymore. That's difficult for adults, adolescents. It's really difficult to unlearn what has kept you safe, what has really got you through life. And once you see that it no longer serves a purpose, it really becomes impactful for you to really let go of those things because you've already built a relationship with it.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So what if I know we're gonna wrap things up really soon, but what are some things that you've done or some helpful tools that you've used to unlearn maybe some bad habits?
Okay. Well, first off, it's one that's really simple. It seems very complex, but it's very simple. Labeling your thoughts. That's like a big piece for me. And the reason why I do that is because a lot of the times when we get into heightened emotions, heightened states, we tend to go down downward spirals, right? Where maybe we fail a test, and you know what comes from that? Oh, I always do this. I always fail on this test, or I knew I was going to do this because I didn't prepare, right? Instead of me going down the cycle, it's me labeling, well, what's going on? Okay, well, I'm upset about this test. I can be okay with the fact that I'm upset. And then I'm stopping it there because I know as soon as I go into that and I answer some questions, oh, now I'm going down the cycle. But it's also, I learned how to educate myself on certain things that happen with my thoughts, which those have been some really poor habits that I had used to have where I would overthink a lot of the times. And I'll be honest, I'm a human, so I overthink in a lot of different situations, which is natural. But building the education on that, which thankfully therapy was able to help me do that as well, understanding what cognitive distortions are. That's the big piece. We all have a lot of them. I recognize that overthinking and cognitive distortions are the best way to describe it is negative thinking patterns or thinking traps, which we all become victim to, where there's overthinking, magical thinking, black and white thinking. That was something that was huge for me. But I didn't realize that the reason why I overthought so many different situations was because in my upbringing, that was how you stay safe. I had to think 10 different steps so that I can make sure I get back home. When the street lights come on and I'm in the hood, oh, I got to make sure I know point A, point B, and I got to make sure I even think of a C because who knows what may happen, right? I didn't realize that, okay, this kept me safe in the past. But if I didn't have the knowledge about it, I would have never understood what my association to that was or why I would do it so often. And so also from there, it's reinstilling certain habits that you want, right? That was something that really helped me as far as when I was younger, I would always get to this point of my actions always kind of drove me to do everything. So I would always be able to complete everything and do everything on time, however I wanted to, etc., especially within academia. I got a news flash when, or a reality check, when that didn't work anymore as I got older. And so I had to learn that it was okay for me to not be great at everything. And that comes with talking to myself. That comes with me being able to affirm myself and validate myself that, okay, even if you don't do this today, you got the opportunity tomorrow. Even if you don't do this today, you still are worth some type of value. regardless of it. And so it's a daily practice. It's really building those relationships with yourself and also sitting with yourself. That's big. I don't know why it's so difficult, but a lot of people find it hard to sit in silence with themselves. They don't want to sit in that world of where their thoughts are just running rampant or where they start to really see how they think about themselves. A lot of people don't want to go to that because it's difficult, it's uncomfortable. Why would you intentionally do that? And so I had to become comfortable with that. Though that's something that really helped me understand, well, wow, your mind becomes really negative. When you don't do something that you felt like you set your mind to, your mind becomes really negative and critical. And you go down this cycle of judging yourself, and none of it helps. But then I don't realize that, man, I did 10 positive, great things today, but I'm only focusing in on one. And so those
Mm.
are really some of the things that I do to really help myself or just unlearn certain behaviors that no longer help. Education, educating myself on really who I am, being able to build a relationship with myself. That really helped me a lot. But also creating small boundaries for me when I know, okay, you're going down this trap, you're going down this rabbit hole. I can label, all right, well, right now I'm upset by X, Y, and Z. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to answer anything else. I just know that in this moment, this has me upset and I can be fine with that. I won't answer anything else. And it's a certain amount of discipline that you have to build. And that comes within your daily routines, whether it's anything that you do, but really being able to set out the action and learn more about yourself really helps for me at least to break down some of these learned behaviors that no longer purpose me at all.
I love that, man. I think my mentor KB Unc, he always says when your mind goes negative, your mouth goes positive. I think it's important, right? Because we are human beings, and our we do have wandering minds, and sometimes we might even have wandering eyes, right? Where like, or somebody, because of maybe your feed, somebody might just have pop something up, and you can't unsee it once you saw it, right? So and so those things affect the way that we think, and I try to be as cautious as I can on social media. But again, you could be just scrolling and you see something that you're not, that maybe might affect the way that you think. But what he said is like, when these thoughts happen, you have to reaffirm yourself, verbally, and you can say, I'm great. You know what I'm saying? Like you can say like I'm amazing. Like I know that I'm dope. Like I know that it doesn't matter that I might not be where I think I'm supposed to be, or where society says I'm supposed to be, but I know that how far I've come, right? And I always have said this. I said, don't forget that you prayed to be in the position that you are right now. You are literally a walking achievement. You are literally living your goals, right? And so we can't forget that. It's easy to forget that when, especially as men, it's
Mhm.
even hard for us to receive praise for our accolades. We're always focused on the next thing, right? Like even LeBron James recently in his All-Star, he said, in his comments, he was like, I don't know which route I want to take. I don't know if I want to do the Tim Duncan route or do the Kobe route, where it's the farewell tour. He's like, I really don't, like receiving praise like that. Or, he's like, I don't really, it feels uncomfortable. This is a man that's been playing basketball for over 20 years in the NBA, the number one player in the league for so much, arguably the greatest player ever in NBA history. And this is a man saying, I don't feel comfortable kind of receiving that kind of praise and accolades like that. Because as men, we're not trained to. We're always like, even if, like, just think about basic comments. I might be, hey, you looking good, brother. Brother be like, hey, man, I'm trying to be like you, right? Like we always throw it right back. Because you know what I'm saying? Like we're not accustomed to just being the recipient of that praise or of that applaud. And so, what I talk about, what KB was mentioning is like, when those negative things come up, you have to be willing to reaffirm yourself verbally and say, no, I am great. And no, I'm not going to compare myself to what I see on online, or I'm not going to compare myself to the comments that people made about me, because they don't know what it's like to be me. There's nobody in the world that knows you better than you, because you've lived this life for X amount of years. Other people only know you based on the amount of time you spent with them, but you know you have spent every single day of your entire life with you. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
don't judge yourself based on the comments or the opinions of other people if those things you feel are negative or aren't really appropriate. You can still reassure yourself verbally and talk about you being a walking achievement, a walking goal setter and goal getter. You know what I'm saying?
Love that. I love that. I love that. Because a lot of people forget that, man. I think, as far as in my opinion, for men as a whole, it's always been instilled, or I won't say always and generalize it, but what's normally instilled is that this is what you're supposed to do, right? And that is so invalidating. It's so invalidating because what you start to believe is that my achievements aren't my achievements. This is what I'm supposed to do, right? And you only look at all of your achievements from a point of being half full because you never get to fully embrace, man, I went through all of these trials and tribulations to get to this point today. Yes, I'm proud. Yes, I am that man. Yes, I'm this person that stands here today and I can say, yeah, I did exactly what you guys said I couldn't, or did exactly more than what the expectation was. Because what we end up doing is, oh, I, yeah, that was me. Cool. Yeah, let's get back to practice, right? It feels uncomfortable, just like you said, because it's so abnormal for men to get that praise and actually simmer in that. It's never been a moment of where you simmered in that praise because, of course, it was always like, oh, well, you did this. Congratulations. All right, let's get back to it. All right, you did this. Cool. All right, now you need to go do this. You always have to strive to be better, to be better. So when you get to that point of where you achieved all you needed to achieve, it doesn't even feel as enjoyable as it could because throughout all this time, you have minimized every single achievement. And so when you get to your highest, it looks just like the same. And that's something that becomes so detrimental because you never really get to fully embrace this euphoric feeling of what it feels like for you to feed life into yourself. Because we've always been taught root for your people, root for the ones around you, help those around you. But we always forget you got to root for yourself just as much as you root for them. Because if you don't, who really is there for you? Who's really got you 100%? Because when you go to sleep, you're asleep. And when you wake up, it's just back to you. So if you never recognize that I want to feed into myself, you never validate the fact that you actually matter. What you're doing is important to who you are. And that's something that definitely has to change because it really takes away from a lot. And it's great that you use the example of LeBron because, I mean, look at everything that he's accomplished. Everybody tries to have all these conversations and these arguments and all of these debates on all these different things. But you see this man who's in a way, the top of the world, still not being able to accept his flowers about himself.
That's real. That's real, man. I genuinely appreciate you. You know,
Wow.
coming back on the show. It's really dope, and I think I already have an idea that I want to do for part three. I think we should talk about the various coping mechanisms or coping thing, the ways that or the various ways that people cope, men specifically, with the maybe the trauma that they've experienced or their emotional reservation. Maybe we could talk about that for part three, because I know there's things that I've done and experienced. I'm sure there's things that you've done and experienced, and then we also, see friends and family members that have done a variety of things. So we could talk about the various ways that people have coped and why we do it, and then go into maybe some positive or some helpful ways, tools to be able to cope with some of the anxiety, this trauma, the stress that we have as men in society. But that I'm gonna put a pin in that, man, because that might be a good one for part three. What you think?
With it. I'm with it. Hey, I'm all for it. I love it. Like I said, I genuinely appreciate the space. I want to embrace it. wholeheartedly, simply because a lot of people aren't doing this, and being able to have a space where we highlight that men are actually human as well. That's important. That's something that a lot of people don't do, and it needs to change. So I'm glad that you're being one of those pioneers to create that change. So it's an honor. I'm with it.
That's a fact, man. I appreciate you again. I'm super excited. We'll do a part three definitely sometime soon. I got some more topics I want to talk about in general. So I appreciate everybody that has taken the time, whether you were just stopping by or you were listening the entire time. Thank you for everybody for the comments, for just contributing to the conversation, right? Because I think it's an important one to have. Please, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Wise Word Wednesday YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, you can get the full version of the show as well. If you didn't get a chance to check it out on Instagram Live, I appreciate my guests again, LaVante. You're a dope man, super amazing person, and I know that you're going to do some great stuff. And I just look forward to continuously witnessing, your greatness, and as well as continuing to have you on the show. And I appreciate everybody. FYB presents Wise Word Wednesdays. I'm going to leave y'all with a "We Fresh," and I love you. Y'all be smooth. Oh, you know what? Last thing, I forgot. My bad. We do have some Wise Word Wednesday hoodies for anybody. If you want to cop some, please cop a Wise Word Wednesday hoodie. Hit me up, $60 for the hoodie. They are definitely super dope, heavy gear hoodies. Super solid. Got the Wise Word Wednesday logo on the back with the Live, Love, Life on the front. That's Reese's Wise Word Wednesday ending, as you all know. So don't hesitate. Cop some hoodies. We literally, it's limited pairs, so we only got a couple of sizes left, but they've been selling like hotcakes. But I just want to remind y'all. All right, y'all. We will see y'all next week. I got another dope guest that's coming to y'all. We're gonna talk about some stuff within the tech industry, I believe. So we're super excited. So y'all be smooth. Take care and have a great rest of your evening. We fresh, and I love you.
Peace.